You thought love was supposed to feel safe. You thought if you just showed up enough, cared enough, tried hard enough, they would finally let you in. But instead, you got silence. You got distance. You got someone who seemed completely unbothered by your pain while you were falling apart trying to figure out what you did wrong. Stop right there. Because what I am about to tell you changes everything about how you have been handling this. Most people think the way to keep an avoidant close is to be more patient, more understanding, more available. They are completely wrong. And that mistake is costing you your peace, your self-worth, and your relationship all at the same time. If you have ever loved someone who pulls away the moment things get real, comment the word mirror right now. Just that one word, mirror. Because by the end of this, you are going to understand exactly what that word means and why it is the only thing that actually works with an avoidant. Here is something nobody is telling you. The avoidant person in your life is not cold. They are not emotionally dead. They are not incapable of love. They are terrified. Deeply, fundamentally, almost unconsciously terrified of what love actually requires. And that fear has built itself a very sophisticated defense system. A system that has one job: to push you away before you can leave first. To make you feel confused, rejected, and desperate enough to either chase them or disappear. And either way, their nervous system gets exactly the confirmation it has been looking for. Either you chase and they feel smothered and justified in pulling back, or you leave and they feel justified in never having opened up. You have been playing into this dynamic without even knowing it, and it has been exhausting you. But here is the thing that changes everything. You cannot break through an avoidant wall by knocking harder. You break through it by making the wall unnecessary. And that requires understanding something about the ego structure of an avoidant that most people completely overlook. Avoidants have built their entire identity around not needing anyone. Not needing love, not needing closeness, not needing you. This is not just a behavior pattern. It is a core belief system, a deeply embedded story they tell themselves every single day. The story goes something like this: I am fine alone. I do not need closeness. Depending on someone is weakness. Needing someone means they have power over me, and giving someone power over me means eventually I will be abandoned or suffocated or both. This story is their ego's greatest achievement. It is also their prison. And here is the wild part. Every time you pursue them, every time you beg for their attention, every time you make yourself smaller or louder or more desperate, you are feeding that story. You are confirming it. You are handing them evidence that they are right. That closeness leads to chaos. That love means losing yourself. That connection is dangerous. So the first thing you need to understand is this: if you want to actually get through to an avoidant, you need to stop feeding the story. You need to stop being the evidence for their ego's case. And you need to start becoming something their nervous system has never encountered before. Safety without desperation. Presence without pressure. Warmth without walls. And this sounds simple, but it is the hardest thing you will ever do, because everything inside you will be screaming to chase them. Every anxious bone in your body will be telling you to reach out, to fix it, to make them see how much you care. And that instinct, that very natural, very human instinct, is the exact thing that keeps an avoidant locked inside their walls. Let me break down how this actually works in real life, because this is where people get lost. They hear give them space, and they think that means become invisible. They hear do not chase, and they think it means be cold. That is not what this is. That is just avoidant behavior mirrored back. And two avoidants in a relationship is just two people silently competing over who needs the other person less. That is not connection. That is a standoff. What you actually need to do is something much more nuanced and much more powerful. You need to regulate yourself first, before anything else. Before any strategy, before any conversation, before any text you draft and delete 3 times. You need to get your own nervous system out of panic mode, because when you are anxious and reactive, you radiate it. They feel it, and it triggers their own system into shutdown mode. The anxious and avoidant nervous systems are like tuning forks. They set each other off. Your panic becomes their wall. Their wall becomes your panic. It is a loop. And the only way to break the loop is to change your frequency first. This is not about being fake. This is not about pretending you are not hurt. This is about genuinely doing the work to become regulated, to be someone who can sit in discomfort without exploding, to be someone who can express a need without it coming out like an accusation, to be someone who can be present without clinging. This is the work, and I know it is hard. And I know it feels unfair, because you might be sitting there thinking, why do I have to do all this work when they are the one shutting down? I hear that. I really do. But here is the truth. You are not doing this for them. You are doing this for you. Because the version of you who is regulated, grounded, and genuinely okay with or without them is the version that an avoidant cannot resist. Not because you become a game player, but because you become the one thing they have never had before. A person who does not confirm their worst fears about love. So what does this regulated, grounded presence actually look like in practice? Let me walk you through it. First, you stop over-explaining yourself. One of the biggest patterns I see with people in anxious-avoidant dynamics is that the anxious partner over-explains everything. They send the long texts. They have the long conversations. They justify, defend, and plead their case over and over again. And every time they do this, the avoidant partner system floods. Too much information, too much emotional weight, too much closeness too fast. And they retreat. They need time to process. They need space to metabolize. But the anxious partner reads their silence as rejection and escalates. More explaining, more justifying, more evidence that love is exactly as suffocating as the avoidant always believed, so stop. Say what you mean in fewer words. Mean what you say with more certainty, not aggression. Certainty. There is a massive difference. Aggression is, I cannot believe you do not care about my feelings. Certainty is, I need some honesty from you right now. One floods their system. The other gives their system something solid to hold on to. Second, you let silence be silence. Avoidants need silence the way anxious people need reassurance. It is their reset button. It is how they recharge, process, and come back to themselves. When you fill every silence with noise, you are taking away the one thing their nervous system needs to regulate. And a dysregulated avoidant is a retreating avoidant. So when they go quiet, you go quiet too. Not because you are playing games, but because you actually have your own life to return to, your own thoughts to think, your own healing to do. And that brings me to the most important piece of all of this. You need to actually build a life that does not orbit around them. This is not a strategy. This is not a manipulation technique. This is survival. And it is also genuinely the most attractive thing you can do. Not attractive in a superficial way, attractive in the deepest possible sense. When an avoidant sees that you are genuinely fulfilled, genuinely engaged with your own life, genuinely not hanging on their every word or silence, something shifts in them. The threat level drops. The danger signal quiets. Because suddenly you are not someone who needs them to be okay. You are someone who wants them but does not need them to function. And for an avoidant, that distinction is everything. Need feels like a trap. Want feels like a choice. And avoidance can only open up when they feel like connection is a choice, not a demand, not an expectation. A choice. Think about it this way. Have you ever noticed that avoidants seem to suddenly become more interested when you pull back? That the moment you stop reaching out, they show up. The moment you seem okay without them, they start chasing a little. People usually call this a game. It is not a game. It is attachment theory playing out in real time. When you pull back, their anxious attachment gets activated. Yes, avoidants have anxious attachment underneath all that armor. The wall is not the foundation. The wall is protection for the terror underneath. And when you pull back, that terror whispers, wait, are they leaving? And their system comes alive. Suddenly they reach out. Suddenly they text. Suddenly they want to see you. But here is where most people make the fatal mistake. The moment the avoidant comes back, they flood them with everything they have been holding back. All the emotion, all the need, all the conversation they have been waiting to have. And the avoidance system floods again. Wall goes back up. You are back to square one. The key is to let them come back slowly. To receive their return with warmth but not desperation. To be genuinely glad to see them without making them feel like they owe you everything for coming back. This is the hardest thing I will ever ask you to do. I am asking you to regulate your own excitement. I am asking you to not unload. I am asking you to just be present, warm, and not make a big deal of the return. Because if you make a big deal of it, you confirm that their absence was as catastrophic as they feared closeness would make them. But if you receive them warmly and simply and confidently, You show them something new. You show them that coming back is safe. Now let me talk about the ego piece, because this is the part that most people miss entirely. And this is the part that changes the game completely. The avoidant ego is built on a very specific foundation. I do not need you. I am better alone. I am self-sufficient. I am strong. And this ego gets stroked every time someone pursues them, because pursuit confirms the story. Someone wanting them so badly confirms that they are desirable, valuable, and most importantly, in control. They have the power. You need them. They can take it or leave it. And their ego gets very comfortable in that position. But what happens when you are no longer pursuing? What happens when you are genuinely, not performatively, but genuinely engaged in your own life? What happens when you are growing, healing, thriving, and not waiting for them? The ego gets destabilized, not because you hurt them, but because you stopped confirming the story. The story says everyone leaves or everyone suffocates me, but you are doing neither. You are just living, and that confuses the ego. That disrupts the pattern. And in that disruption, there is an opening. Because here is what avoidants are actually looking for, even though they cannot admit it and sometimes do not consciously know it. They are looking for proof that closeness is safe. They are looking for someone who will not abandon them when they pull back, who will not smother them when they come forward, who will not make love feel like a losing game. And when you stop chasing, stop flooding, start regulating, and start genuinely thriving, you start becoming that proof. You start becoming the evidence against their own story. And the ego, as strong as it pretends to be, cannot argue with evidence forever. This is what I mean when I say you can collapse an avoidant ego without crushing a person. You are not trying to win. You are not trying to be cold. You are not trying to make them feel bad or insecure or desperate. You are doing something much more profound. You are becoming someone safe. And safety is the one thing an avoidant has never fully experienced in a relationship. And if you become that, if you genuinely embody that, they will feel it. They will be drawn to it like they have never been drawn to anything before. Because the part of them underneath all that armor, the scared child who learned that love was dangerous, that child is still in there. And that child is desperately looking for someone who will not confirm their worst fears. But I need to be very clear here. This does not mean you become their therapist. This does not mean you sacrifice your own needs on the altar of their healing. This does not mean you tolerate being treated badly while waiting for them to become emotionally available. No, absolutely not. Because here is the other side of the coin. An avoidant who senses that you will accept any treatment, who learns that you have no limits, who comes to believe that no matter what they do, you will be there waiting, will not respect you. They will not cherish you. They will take you for granted. And they will continue to pull back indefinitely because there is no real cost to doing so. Boundaries are not walls. Boundaries are not punishment. Boundaries are the language of self-respect. And when an avoidant sees that you have real, consistent, compassionate limits, it does something very specific in their system. It triggers both their fear and their respect simultaneously. The fear says, this person might actually leave, which is terrifying. The respect says, this person knows their worth, which is attractive. And that combination, fear of real loss mixed with genuine respect, is what actually motivates an avoidant to stretch, to grow, to try, not out of guilt or obligation, but out of genuine desire to not lose something that feels actually good and actually safe. So what does a boundary actually look like with an avoidant? It is not an ultimatum delivered in anger. It is not a threat made out of desperation. It is a calm, clear statement of what you will and will not accept, followed by action that matches your words. If you say, I cannot continue in a relationship where I never know where I stand, and then you continue for 6 more months in exactly that dynamic, you have not set a boundary. You have set a suggestion. And avoidance, like all humans, pay attention to what you do far more than what you say. So when you say something, mean it. And when you mean it, follow through. Not because you want to punish them, but because you respect yourself enough to live according to your own standards. And that energy, that solid, unwavering, self-respecting energy, is the most disruptive thing you can bring into an avoidance world, because they have never seen it modeled clearly and consistently and without cruelty. Most people either have no limits or punishing ones. Compassionate firmness is a revelation to an avoidant nervous system. Now I want to talk about communication, because this is where so many relationships with avoidance break down completely and unnecessarily. Most people communicate with avoidance in one of two ways. Either they are too emotional, which floods the avoidance system and causes shutdown, or they become stonewalled themselves, going cold and withholding, which confirms the avoidance belief that closeness always ends in pain. Neither works. What works is something completely different, led with curiosities instead of accusation. Instead of "why do you always pull away?" try something like "I have noticed you seem distant lately. I am not trying to make that mean something bad. I just wanted to check in and see how you are doing." The first one puts them in the dock. The second one gives them an exit ramp from their own defense system. You are making it safe to answer. You are not demanding. You are inviting. And then this is crucial. You wait. You let there be silence after the invitation. You do not fill it. You do not prompt. You do not give them the answer. You let them find their own way to respond. And sometimes they will not respond the way you hoped. Sometimes they will deflect or minimize or go quiet again. And when that happens, you do not escalate. You say something like, "Okay, I am here when you are ready," and you genuinely mean it, and then you actually go back to your own life. Not as a performance, but as a real person who has other things to engage with. This pattern, open invitation, space, no escalation, genuine return to self, will feel so foreign to an avoidant that it will eventually break through the noise of their defense system, because it asks nothing of them that they cannot give, and that makes giving feel safe. I also want to address something very specific that happens in avoidant relationships and causes enormous pain. The push and pull cycle, the hot and cold, the "I love you" and then disappearance. The intimacy followed by inexplicable withdrawal. This cycle is not cruelty, even though it feels like it. It is the avoidance nervous system oscillating between desire for connection and terror of it. They genuinely want you, and that wanting terrifies them. So they pull back from the thing they want most, and then the distance makes them want it again, and then the wanting terrifies them, and they pull back again. Understanding this does not mean you accept it indefinitely without change, but it does mean you stop taking it personally in a way that collapses you. When an avoidant pulls back after a moment of closeness, it is almost never about what you said or did wrong. It is almost always about how that closeness activated their system. Their withdrawal is not a statement about your worth. It is a statement about their fear. And if you can hold that understanding while also holding your own ground, you become something extraordinary. You become the person who does not make it worse. And in an avoidance world, someone who does not make it worse is incredibly rare and incredibly precious. Let me talk about the long game for a moment. Because everything I have described, the regulation, the limits, the communication, the genuine fullness of your own life, these are not things that produce results in a week or even a month in many cases. Avoidant attachment was formed over years of early experience that taught someone that closeness equaled danger. Undoing that wiring, or at least creating enough safety around it that someone can override it with conscious choice, takes time, real time. And during that time, you will have moments where you wonder if it is working. You will have moments where you want to go back to chasing, because at least then you felt like you were doing something. You will have moments of doubt and loneliness and frustration. And in those moments, the most important thing you can do is come back to yourself, not to the relationship, not to them, to yourself, to your own healing, to your own growth, to your own answer to the question, what do I actually want and what am I actually willing to accept? Because here is the truth that I think sits underneath everything I have said today. You cannot rescue someone from their own avoidance. You cannot love someone into readiness that they have not chosen themselves. You cannot be so perfectly regulated and safe and present that someone who has not decided to grow actually grows. People only change when they choose to. And avoidance only open up when they choose to do the internal work that opening requires. What you can do, all can ever do, is be someone who creates the conditions where that choice becomes possible. And whether or not they make that choice tells you everything you need to know about whether this relationship has a future. So yes, everything I have described can genuinely shift the dynamic. Regulation, limits, communication, genuine fullness of your own life, these things absolutely change the energy between you. They absolutely reduce the triggers that keep an avoidant in shutdown mode. They absolutely create more space for connection to grow, but they are not a guarantee. And you need to go in knowing that. Because if you implement all of this as a strategy designed to make them stay, you have already missed the point. The point is to become someone you are proud of being, in a relationship or out of one. Someone who is genuine and grounded and clear about their worth. Someone who loves fully but not desperately. Someone who stays because they choose to, not because they are afraid to leave. And ironically, that person, the one who has truly done this inner work and genuinely means it, is the one an avoidant is most likely to actually choose. Not because of manipulation, but because of magnetism. The real kind. The kind that comes from actually knowing who you are and refusing to shrink for anyone. One more thing before we wrap up. People often ask me, is this person actually capable of change? Can an avoidant really become a partner who shows up fully? And the honest answer is that some avoidants with the right inner work, with sometimes therapy, with a genuine reckoning with their own patterns, do absolutely grow into deeply loving present partners. I have seen it happen. It is real. The attachment system is not fixed. It is flexible, and with enough safety and enough personal choice and enough time, people do shift. But other avoidants, particularly those who have no desire to look inward, who dismiss their patterns as just who they are, who refuse to see the impact their behavior has on the people they claim to love, those avoidants may not change in any meaningful time frame. And staying with someone in the hope that your love will be the catalyst that finally makes them see what they are doing is one of the most painful experiences a human being can have. So you need to ask yourself an honest question. Not what could this person become, but who are they right now? And is who they are right now, without any projected future version, enough for you to be genuinely happy in this relationship? If the answer is yes, then everything I have shared today is your roadmap. Regulate, show up, set limits, communicate with curiosity, build your life, and give it real time. If the answer is no, if who they are right now is already causing you more pain than peace, then the most loving thing you can do for both of you is to be honest about that. Because staying when you know you should leave does not help them grow. It just deepens both of your patterns. It keeps you in anxious pursuit. It keeps them in avoidant distance. And neither of you gets the love you actually deserve. You deserve someone who chooses you, not someone you had to trick or manipulate or shrink yourself to keep. Not someone you had to chase until you forgot what it felt like to be chased. Someone who sees you and wants you and chooses to show up. Every avoidant is capable of that, but only if they decide to be. And your job is not to make that decision for them. Your job is to know your own worth clearly enough that you will not wait indefinitely for someone who has not made it. That is the real crush. Not crushing them, not diminishing them, not punishing them. Crushing the dynamic that keeps you both stuck. Crushing the pattern of chase and retreat by refusing to play your assigned role in it. Stepping out of the drama and into your actual life. That is where the power is. That is where the real shift happens. And that is where you find out once and for all whether this person is actually choosing you or just tolerating your presence until they find a comfortable enough exit. You already know everything you need to know. You have probably known it for a while. The question is just whether you are ready to act on it. And I think the fact that you are here, that you are listening, that you are trying to understand rather than just react, tells me that you are closer to ready than you think.